Conversations with Azu Ishekwele.
January 15 marks a significant date in Nigeria's calendar for many reasons. One, it was on this date in 1966 that the first and most bloody military coup in the country's history took place. Two, it was on January 15, 1970 that the instruments of surrender by the Biafran army were procured, marking the end of the Nigerian Civil War. And three, since 1970, Nigerian Armed Forces have observed January 15 as Remembrance Day, which is the United States equivalent of Veterans Day. So are you a millennial or a Gen Z or Gen AI, if there's anything of the sort? Come close, let me share some history hidden away in books. Of course, you could Google everything, but not everything is on Google. On the wake of Nigeria's 65th independence anniversary, we brought you a review of the Harold Smith story, an in-depth account by a colonial administrator of how the colonial master, Britain, handed Nigeria a poisoned chalice. Today we bring you another review of the book titled The Brothers' War, Biafra and Nigeria, which records events around January 15, 1966, leading up to the Nigerian Civil War in May 1967 and afterwards, as documented by John de St. George, and it is titled A British War Journalist's Account of How January 15 Changed Nigeria. Welcome to Conversation with Azu, our weekly diary on life and politics, where Azu brings you perspectives of January 15 as Nigeria commemorates what will henceforth be known as the Armed Forces Celebration and Remembrance Day. Hello, Azu.
My pleasure to be here again, Julius. Thank you for having me.
All right. So, was it just the sheer force of history or that influenced your choosing this topic, or was it just coincidence?
I believe that it was a combination of both. As you said in your intro, January 15 was exactly 60 years since that very bloody and tragic coup. And I also thought that perhaps it would be good to remind perhaps older ones, but more importantly, younger folks in the country of some of the things that shaped our history. I'm hoping that those who are interested may take lessons from this, and that taking such lessons to heart would save us from any such tragedy in future.
The author of the book,
John de St. George. That's how it's.
Is it a French name?
Yes. Well, it's actually derived from it's called John de St. George.
He has qualified the events of January 15, 1966 as a tragedy of elite failure.
That's correct.
What does that mean?
It means exactly what it implies, and that's what obviously happened, and the summary of it in the phrase in which you have used was clearly a deep-seated disaffection, especially between the ranks of the Nigerian military, especially in the major ranks of the Nigerian, those who had gone abroad and trained in Sandhurst. They were called the Sandhurst boys, or the Sandhurst, the Sandhurst generation. Those who went to train there, they had come and seen they had gone abroad and seen what was happening. It was also a very important period, not just for Nigeria, but also all over the continent. Changes were happening on the continent and in different parts of the world, to which people could relate. And these were events against which people could also hold their own home governments accountable. And so in the view of the so-called January boys, who obviously would belong to the elite, because the class in which they belonged, they were not just, if you like,
they were officers.
Yeah, these were officers. So there obviously was a disconnect. There was serious disaffection between what they saw happening in other parts of the world and the future that they thought that the promise of Nigeria's independence held. There was a difference, a serious dissonance between that and what obviously they were experiencing. I also remember that there had been very, very contentious elections in Nigeria in 1964, especially, and that was also still brewing. So I think it was that that meeting of failure in their estimation between expectation and promise delivered that actually led to that collapse of what the book described as a collapse of elite trusts, which obviously then led to subsequent events that led to the war in 1967.
All right. Your account describes Nigeria as the star of Black Africa, as was symbolized by its hosting the first, Commonwealth summit outside of London.
That's correct.
Yeah. What went wrong? Today, a few people consider Nigeria a failed state. Not a few
Interesting.
people. I mean to say.
That's a very interesting question. And that question is as old as Nigeria itself. I'm not one that is fond of blaming the country, every problem that the country has on its colonial legacy, because there are countries that also had this legacy and have managed it better or sort of lived down that legacy or optimized it for whatever benefits. But you really can't run away from that the squalid, duplicitous legacy that Britain left in the way the country was structured were very serious problems, which unfortunately Nigeria has not been able to manage properly. But to your question, which is, what went wrong? Many things went wrong, and I mean, especially, your question is in relation to what we used to be and what we now are. Many things went wrong, but I think if one were to reduce it, it's just failure of governance, significant and very, very catastrophic failure of governance. Difference between the promise and the delivery and execution of that promise. I think that is perhaps at the heart of Nigeria's problem. Some people have talked about corruption. Others have talked about ethnicity or religion and all kinds of things. And of course, corruption, also has been. But all of that, in my view, one can just summarize it as, if you like, a cataclysmic failure of governance. Huge failure of governance has brought us where we are. And one is just hoping that we will take from the lessons of the past and then make the future better, both for ourselves and for our children.
All right. You recalled in your article that former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, when he visited Nigeria in 2020, yes, said he felt perfectly safe. And he said Nigeria will potentially export future prime ministers to the United Kingdom. Did this sound prophetic in the light of the current British politics?
Well,
the UK leader of opposition is a Nigerian.
He said former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson made this comment. I think that it was last year, when he went to the investment summit in Imo. I think that was where he made the comment about Nigeria being an exporter of crude oil, unrefined resources. And then, of course, in exchange, we got finished products from Britain. But then he made the very patronizing comment that Nigeria also exports future prime ministers. Obviously, he was referring to Mrs. Kemi Badenoch. But I felt obliged, to remind him, because you remember there was also such a very condescending comment about Nigeria by Cameron. By the former British, that Nigeria was fantastically corrupt. And then, of course, the one by President Trump, not referring that Nigeria was a disgraced country. Nigeria is a disgraced country. I mean, from time to time, we hear these comments from important world leaders, but we also need to remind ourselves that Nigeria, whatever the challenges we are facing at the moment, Nigeria is a country that has such a great legacy and a great future. And, well, if you like, I'm sorry to use that phrase, but I can't find a better expression now. Also has the potential to, if we get our act together, to make ourselves to make ourselves great again, if you like. It's the most populous
black
black
country
country
on
in the
earth.
world. Well, that does not. What has that got to do with the price of fish? But I'm just saying that if you also look at certain sectors, certain areas of the Nigerian society, you would find that Nigerians are doing great things, both Nigerians here and Nigerians in the diaspora. And we must never lose sight of the great legacy that we have and the burden of history upon us as a country with the largest black population in the whole world.
All right, finally, some of the nuances in the book have remained contentious issues, national problem for over 60 years, with allegations of genocide in recent times, ethno-religious profiling ever coming into sharp relief. Will these brothers ever stop fighting?
Great question. Well, you see, in every community, even between, we have this proverb that even between the mouth and the tongue, there can be quarrel. I mean, it is how this diversity, it's how we manage our diversity. It's not supposed to be a curse or a negative, but it is how we manage it. I think that really is a major responsibility for our leaders and also for the followers as well. That our diversity need not be something that keeps dividing us, because there are other countries of the world with systems of government and leaders and followers that, regardless of their diversity, have still managed to make themselves great. And I think it is possible for us, in spite of our diversity, in spite of we have over 250 ethnic nationalities in Nigeria. It's possible. We're such an important, huge melting pot. And if we realize the burden that history has placed on our shoulders, I think it's possible to turn our differences and our diversity into a major platform and advantage for growth and development.
All right, for more on how January 15 changed Nigeria, I'll bring you a short closing excerpt from Azu. And I quote, "As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into decisive months, I wonder if the January boys might have acted differently if, as Saint du Jour said, they knew that the country they were trying to save would be far worse than anything they might have imagined on the morning of January 15. End of quote. For the full text of these articles and others, visit our website at azuishekwene.com. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share our content. Remember our books, Writing for the Media and Monetizing It, and A Midlifer's Guide to Content Creation and Profit. Just go to www.azu.media and click on the links. And a New Year surprise. Azu has a special offer for 2 new ebooks. Listen, for you who are dreaming about writing books, listen, I will not repeat this. The ebooks are titled 1. How I Wrote a Best-Selling Book in 90 Days While Working Full-Time and Keeping My Originality. And the second one is How to Market a Book Successfully, a Simple Launch Guide for First-Time Authors. The offer closes at the end of January. To take advantage of the offer, visit www.azu.media and follow the links. Thanks for coming on the show, Azu.
Thanks for having me once again, Julius. See you next time.
Bye for now.
Conversations with Azu Ishekwene.